So, as you can see, we have two very special guests. And I have a question for both of them to sort of warm them up to the audience. Stephanie's going to interview Anthony in a couple of minutes. And then Anthony's going to take some question and answers, and Stephanie may as well. And then Anthony's going to lead us through a brief meditation to end our evening. And then I know some of you know of his books. He's written so many books, and we have some over there. And we have that table with a pen on it for a book signing for anyone who would like. So more on that later. So that's what our evening holds for you. But to warm us up, I thought that I would ask them each a question. And neither of them know the question that I would ask them.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, what could possibly go wrong? And I know they're both so quick on their feet, or on their seat, that this should be no problem for them. So who shall I start with?
Let's start with Anthony.
Yeah.
I was going to say.
You need to be quicker.
Okay. So Anthony, given that this is your first place in Canada, and given that you've been interested in Canada for a very long time, and
Yes.
finally made it here,
Yes.
what is your impression of Halifax?
Well, I haven't seen a lot of it.
Well, not the city, the people.
The people.
Yeah, the quality, the traits, the character.
Yeah, very careful.
It's maybe a trick.
Well, actually, I can start as I was flying in and flying over Newfoundland, and I was looking for Prince Edward Island, and I tried to stop one of the hostesses to ask her, but they were always busy. But just flying through and then looking at the lands coming through and coming into Halifax, I thought it's a very organic place, and how until modern technology has taken over, well, it hasn't taken over here necessarily, but like nature protected this purity. Nature protected this naturalness. Okay, now people can do all kinds of things with technology, but nature like embraced, you felt that nature's embrace and protection. And, you know, I'm not used to snow.
And there is none here.
Yes.
But I can see how it actually protects, and so this trait also in the people that I have met so far, you know, it's not, I mean, I haven't met, you know.
Just me and
Just the two of us, really quite personal, whenever you say no. He's got a lot of people.
So I felt they're organic too, you know, in the sense of naturalness, not a lot of processing and fabrication. And so it makes it a lot, you know, it makes it easy. So I don't know if that's a good, I mean, I don't know if that's a good thing to say. The people are organic.
Thank you. Thank you. And this morning you mentioned that what country has a leaf from a tree?
Yes,
on
I
their
remember
flag?
this.
How organic is that? I've never thought about that before. So, thank you, Anthony. And Stephanie, your question is, I know that you're writing a book. Maybe that's not out, and I shouldn't say that. Okay, so you're writing a book. And I was wondering, what was your relationship with silence through the writing processes? Tonight's theme is silence.
Yeah. That's a great question, because I wrote a lot of the book in really busy places. With my first book, I wrote it a lot in silence. I would wake up early with a thing in my head, and I would kind of slide out of the bed and try not to move my head too much to keep everything just where it was. Kind of slink downstairs, get the laptop out quietly, and type in the dark in the early morning before my husband woke up, before anybody else was awake. And that was really important with my first book, which was about love, death, and rock and roll. With this book, it's a much more raucous story, and in many ways it happens mostly in a car, on tour, across the country. And so I was able to write it in places where I never actually thought I could get good work done, in bars and in coffee shops and wherever I happened to be when things occurred to me. And so, you know, when you write, if you're lucky, you can enter into a space where you sort of carry a little cone of silence around with you. And so you can be in a really bustling place and have your own, you know, little fortress of solitude there where you can get good things done. And that was, particularly in the first draft of it, which I was writing, by hand on the back of scripts I would bring home from work, so that I wouldn't get too big on myself about what I was doing. There's endless opportunities to be humble when you're writing on the back of a traffic report from 2 years ago or whatever. So because I was writing it that way, the silence of it was mostly kind of self-generated, if that makes any sense.
Sounds like a meditator to me.
Yeah, I have a really fractious relationship with formal meditating. I'm very, very bad at it. Apparently later I'll be meditating in front of you all. I hope you'll have your eyes closed. That's going to go great. But for me, writing is a kind of probably an accidental meditation.
Accidental meditator. That's a new title for a book. That's great. Thank you both. I know the theme for this evening is seeking silence, and I know that wherever your curiosity leads you will be great for all.
Well, I thought we would just sit here and be quiet.
Oh. Why not?
It is funny. Thank you, Judy. It's so interesting because journalists use silence as a weapon. We use it in a way to get people to say more because it's such a natural impulse to fill a silence. I'm not going to do that to you.
No.
Probably. But let's start, if we could, with just some really simple terms of reference so that we're all on the same page. How is the kind of silence that you write about different from just not talking?
Oh, good question. But for me, the real silence is very communicative. It's like you tune in, you touch something very subtle. Whether it's in a person, whether it's in yourself, or whether it's even in nature. So it's not a matter of not talking, but you're communicating or conversing on another, more, let's say, tuned in level. So for me it's connectedness. That's how I would talk about. But that's how I would describe this type of silence. And I also feel that silence is transformative. That you get perspectives, you understand things better, and it can transform the way you see things, the way you feel about things. Like this stopping and gathering yourself. I think it is very useful in terms of improving the relationship with the world outside me.
Can it also improve your relationship with yourself?
Yeah, definitely, because that's where it's all at. What you see in the outside, it's generated from what's inside. And that's the thing of science is how to connect the inside with the outside. Real science is that. It's not going inside and just staying there and being lost. It's actually creating an inner strength. It's empowering an inner system. Because this is because living in Greece where everything's collapsing.
Not a lot of silence in that.
Oh, well, a lot of people are not silent. Actually, they're really hectic. They're really fearful. There are a lot of things happening, and that's the whole thing. I think when things are all systems outside are collapsing, it's actually the only thing that will really make it forward is a recognition and developing of your inner blueprints. Your inner system of being. I can think, I can feel, I can understand, I can create. So it's very effective. I mean, it's not a cop-out.
What do you mean by that?
Well, some people think, you see, some people use science in different ways. They don't want to face things, so they move away from it. They want to punish somebody, you don't talk to them. And cop-out is this, not actually wanting to face or engage. Whereas silence is actually the opposite. It's, I think all the people that actually created something new and it was beneficial observed, because one aspect of silence is observing and reflecting. What comes to mind was people like Florence Nightingale, there was a doctor in Europe called Schimmelweis. He's called the saviour of mothers. He noticed, it was about 120 years ago, how many women were dying in childbirth. And, he was observing the women who gave birth at home were far less of them were dying than in the hospital. So he worked out why this was. And it was observing. It's like observing, reflecting, experimenting. And of course they didn't accept it. The other doctors didn't accept. Because it's too simplistic. He discovered germs. He said it's too simplistic. Can't be. So he actually was thrown out.
Wow.
So what I mean is that silence is extremely, it's a power that is very creative.
You say in your book that silence is not a technical exercise, that we may have to begin our relationship with it in this way. What do you mean by that?
Well, people think that if they just, even silently and inside, they can just keep saying prayers, or they can just keep chanting mantras, or they just learn a technique. It's not really silence. I mean, for example, mantra is, they say, to command the mind, to control the mind, and they will repeat a sound. And I'm sure there's some benefit in it. In everything there's a benefit. But can my mind be controlled if I keep having bad feelings? If I keep remembering the past? If I keep, resentments? I mean, because no matter how much I say, even I am peaceful, but there's a part of me that carries those bad feelings. The technique is not going to help me. It's got to be translated into my life, and it becomes a lifestyle, a way of being.
So how do you move from that technical exercise to that way of being?
You look at yourself. I've got to really look at myself, and my code or my belief, how is that in behavior? Is it connected in some way? Because I think this is why people are so sick of, do I say it?
Do it.
Politics and politicians and religion and a lot of religious leaders, because or anybody actually, it's even happening with parents now. One belief system, good formulas, clever, good ideas, but the behavior is not connected. And so this discrepancy, this incoherence, makes people lose trust.
Why is that so hard for us to live our values?
We enjoy talking.
Now that's a heck of a thing to say to a radio. I fear you're right.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with talking, it's fine, but much deeper than that is actually I'm not connecting to where I'm at. And I've often told people this, and sometimes they've been a little bit reactive. I said, beliefs, everybody's got good beliefs. Whether it's a Buddhist, whether it's a Hindu, whether it's a Christian. And I said, even some atheists have really good beliefs. But the key is the behavior, isn't it? I mean, I can talk about love and equality, but then, how do I treat the people I live with? How do I interact with them? And so it's that I don't go deep enough to examine where I'm really at, and just live on formulas which may be right in themselves, but there's not an appropriateness in terms of application. And so, there's this big incoherence. And this is happening so much globally. So much. I mean, I don't know in Canada.
It's happening. Yeah,
it's happening. But in places like Greece, in places like Italy, it's farcical, the system. We were saying once with a group of people, it's like if just the politics stopped for 4 or 5 years and people were left on their own, maybe something would happen.
Society would sort itself out.
Yeah, because they would be able to tune into something inside blueprints. I think this is the moment of trust in self.
Let's talk more about that. In your book, you talk about the original state of being.
Mm.
What is that?
The original state of being goes back to this, these blueprints that are always in us. In ancient Greece, a group of students once gathered around Plato, and they asked him, what's the truth? What's the truth? And he was very casual. What's the truth? They were expecting sort of some long, philosophical things. He said, truth. It's to remember what you have forgotten. And this is the whole thing. We have come into a very big collective and, of course, personal amnesia. And so I need to sort of, awaken. Awaken to that idea that we all have original blueprints, original qualities. That's why we have this instinct. An instinct for real peace, an instinct for real love. Everybody talks about love, but look, is it Hollywood style? Is it Bollywood style? What do we mean by it? And so knowledge and understanding help us a lot to get back to the experience of that original blueprint. And then when that starts to come up, we start to feel our spiritual dimension, when it starts to emerge, that's when we start to become true human beings again. Because love is not just a feeling for 1 or 2 people, for example. It's more democratic. When you use your original, you're much more democratic in the sense that you're much more inclusive and love. Without respect, how can there be? Without kindness, without forgiveness, without patience, or with yourself first. With yourself first, and then with others.
That notion of being compassionate with oneself is it seems so lost to us.
Yeah, but it is lost, and with compassion comes caring. I grew up on a farm, and Italian parents who come out from their country, and they really wanted me to have an education and to learn English, and this is what I did. And I remember my father, he grew vegetables, fruit trees, and a lot of care. And I remember once I wanted to build a little, what do you use this word, cubby house? It's like a little thing that like made of wood.
Like a shed?
Yeah, like a shed, but for kids.
Yeah,
but for kids. Tree house, yeah, tree house. Literally, it was a tree house. I put nails in the tree. Peach tree, this peach tree.
Oh, not a peach tree.
It was a peach tree. And I was 11, 12, I don't remember. And my brothers and my cousin were 5 boys. And we did all this. And then I remember coming home. I was home actually, my father came, and he looked at this sort of cloudy look. And he never, shouted or anything like my mother did. He would just sort of look, and you knew something was wrong. And so he said, "Who put the nails in the peach tree?" And my brother said, he did. It was his idea. And I said, was it? It was you thought of this? He said, yeah, we were building this tree house, but you put nails in the tree. I said, yeah, just 2. It's only 2. He said, well, if you had 2 splinters in your leg, just had 2 splinters in your leg, it's not natural. And that tree has given us so many peaches for so many years is it's extremely ungrateful. At that age or so. Of course, it must have made an impression because I remembered it a lot afterwards. But on myself, it's a tree. And we say, we must always be grateful. And so you will go and you take out those nails and you apologize to the tree. In those days you didn't answer back to your parents. And I said, no, I'm not going to apologise to no tree. I mean, what is this? Of course I had to take the nails out because he'd check.
Yeah.
But whether I apologised or not, he wouldn't know. So I took them out and everything. But he never, he didn't ask me. So it's okay. But I didn't apologise to the tree. Well, I didn't, I just, But later on, I started to realise, because he taught me many things about the moon, what plants to plant with the full moon, and as I grew older, he would say, this plant, don't plant it with that plant this with this one. I was brought up in the scientific, university. I said, why, do they have cups of tea together or something? This one with this one. Do they gossip about the other flowers?
Well, they wanted you to work in education.
He did, but then later I realised that was the real education. Because they used to go out in silence because Australia was very hot, so they had to do a lot of things just after sunrise. And sometimes they dragged me along. Although I like nature. So I learned about silence, and because something doesn't speak doesn't mean they're alive and existing and valuable. And then I started to realise the respect for nature is so important. And even for people, sometimes we're very impressed by clever people, by clever ideas. And the one who may not appear so clever, we don't give them attention, but actually their state of being might be much more genuine. So this thing of original being is this, that you're really tuning into the value. And then when I became a teacher, then I realized that actually it's all the children that are important, and all of them are valuable. And the quiet ones doesn't mean they're not creative. Doesn't mean that they don't know. The original, I think this is a very good question, because I feel that is where we are going now. Everything is collapsing, and the movement is really inward. You can't progress unless you go inward. And the original state. It's like that everyone's going to original thing, the roots. The original people of the country, the original qualities, something that is moved up, is not processed and fabricated.
People talk about wanting authenticity.
Authenticity, yes.
You talk in the book about moments of discovery that can occur in silence at rest, but could Archimedes have had his eureka moment of discovering the law of buoyancy if he had only relaxed in the tub? Or is the busyness and the hard work before a time of silence also vital?
Yes, it's also vital. It's very important for the mind, the heart, intellect, whichever you use, to inquire. It's very important, this. Because also mentioned in the book about Fritjof Capra, the Tao of physics. He was trying to work out things, and then he went by the sea to relax, and that's when he got his eureka moment. He saw all the molecules, everything dancing in a rhythm, and it felt to him like it was Nataraj, Shiva, the Lord of the Cosmos, dancing. Maria Montessori, the first Italian woman doctor, whose, again, parents upset that she was doing this and everything. and she upset them even more by deciding to go and work in the slums of Rome. I'm not too happy with that, because she had to look after the children that they said were handicapped mentally or emotionally. Although she was a doctor, she became an educator. She observed. With moments of discovery, she observed, she saw. And then she formulated games and things like that. And those children really bloomed. And that's why we have that system, Montessori schools.
So how can we balance that busyness, that inquiry, with moments of real silence and reflection?
Yeah. You know, I think as a West, I have to be my own teacher. And I have to see the consequences. When I go into an extreme, it's never good. There's also an extreme of silence is not good. Because the real silence is curved. You go in, and then you come out, and it creates a lot more quality in your speech and in your actions. You're more aware of what you're saying. You're more aware of the impact my words will have on others. Whereas if I'm busy, it becomes a ritual or a routine to appear functional sometimes to others and to yourself. You know, like you say, oh, I'm stressed. You know, others will say, bravo, good, you're working.
Well done.
Well done. But it's sick. But it's, you know, and it's not the reality. A person who is stressed will never be clear enough to perceive things and will never make right decisions. That's why I need that inner peace. And so you're saying, how do you develop this? Is, you know, I learn from my mistakes. There's no problem with mistakes. The problem is when I can't learn from them. And if I see that the way I speak or the way I have decided things has a negative impact on others, then that is when compassion and caring should kick in. And I must behave in a different way. And also we are different. I may be, you know, I can be busy, I can do a number of things, but it doesn't mean everybody should be like that. Some people are more reflective by nature, and they add to the beauty of a task. But also for them, if they're always reflecting, and thinking and never get into action, it won't work. You know, so we've got to get a balance by looking at ourselves and appreciating ourselves. So if my nature is more active and communicative, that's good. But if it goes to an extreme, it won't be.
In some ways you make it sound so simple in the book you write. I go inside and connect with inner peace. I become quiet and everything becomes clear.
Yes.
Can true enlightenment really be so easy?
No.
No.
It's easy to explain, but it takes a lot. I'm not going to say it's difficult to do, but it takes a lot of attentiveness to do it. You know, you've got to be like aware. You know, they use this word mindfulness. I've got to be mindful of doing it. So it's not difficult in itself, but in the application, because we tend to forget. And I also, because we did a seminar now in Greece about mindfulness, but I said also a very important thing with mindfulness that we do forget is to be heartful as well. Because if there's no heartfulness in the mindfulness, then it can again become an intellectual exercise. I'm just attentive. You know, a bit robotic, you know, I'm attentive. And it can be this, you know, do it like this, don't make this mistake, don't like that. But it should be a little bit lighter and easier.
More organic.
Yes, more organic.
Just to come full circle on
yes.
that one.
And heartful. Heartful is the caring, the compassion, the appreciation of yourself. And whatever's in front of you, it's the task, it's another person, to be present, to be mindful of them, but also to be heartful. Because the opposite of that is mindless or heartless. And it happens to be very mindless about things. So many mistakes are made, and the consequences is on people. And this is especially important when you're in a position of responsibility. And then there's that consequence on others. It's a great lack of compassion, great lack of care.
What do we have to give up in order to let silence in?
What do we have to give up? I would say, what do we... because otherwise if you say, don't do this, it's not a matter of don'ts, right? Because otherwise, it gets overwhelming. I find, again, ask myself, is there any change or any transformation that can happen inside that would be of more benefit for myself and also for others? So let me transform the way I speak, for example. Think before speaking. And I remember once in India, there's a yogi, she's 97 years old now, and I said, yes, it's, got to think before speaking. She says, but you're going to do something more than that. And I said, yeah, really, what? I thought that was quite an advanced effort. Think before speaking. She said, think before thinking. And I thought, how do I do that? And she was saying, think before thinking. You are the charioteer, you are the soul, you are looking, your mind is one of your vehicles. You can observe your thought, and you can decide whether you allow that thought to come through or not, because a thought is a seed that then creates your feelings and your attitudes.
That's some high-level stuff.
It's a high-level stuff, yes. But not impossible, eh?
I mean, theoretically, I could imagine a time when I might, strive for that, if not actually achieve it. Sometime in the future. Maybe tomorrow.
Everything begins today. Everything begins now. But again, do I feel the value of it? That's work. I can only be motivated by not just understanding, but also feeling the real value of it. Then that gets me going. And then it's a daily thing. It's not, Monday, well, let's say Saturday, Sunday, I'm mindful, I'm attentive, I try to close the gap between belief and behavior. But, some people tell me, but I have to get into the real world. I said, really, what's the real world? Is it the chaos, the stress, that's the real world? Or is that the artificial world, and that's why it's chaotic and stressed? Yeah, and they look, they say, I don't know.
And you think, I know.
I said, when something is more natural, it works better. There's a peace, there's a harmony. It doesn't mean you are passive, because sometimes people mix this. They think being peaceful, being in harmony is this sort of passive thing. No, not at all. You're still very proactive, but there's a care. I would say care.
You say silence propels us into action.
Yeah.
Say more about that. How does it do that?
Well, for example, if you're in a silence, really, you're starting to feel yourself. You feel this feeling of peace and the harmony and the respectfulness that comes. It just can't stay there. It actually must come out into some kind of manifestation. Otherwise, it becomes so narcissistic. You get narcissistic and lost in your world, and you don't care about the peace or well-being of others. You're just concerned to feel good yourself.
So there's a responsibility.
There's a responsibility, yes. You see, real spirituality always has a social impact. And it should have a social impact.
Do you think that, by and large, we have sort of forgotten that?
Yes. I mean, people are so, I know from the country that I'm living, plans, programs, policies, all the time, and they never work. Plans, policies, and they do not work because the consciousness of the people who formulate it is always the same. And it is based on, I have to say it in the negative, but they don't care of the people they're supposed to serve. There's greed, there's self-interest, and so it cannot work. They need an education. We all do, all of us do. To be propelled into quality action is the proof that the silence is a mature silence and it's a healthy silence. Because if it is immature, if it's unhealthy, it becomes too narcissistic.
Just self-serving.
Self-serving. As being busy is the same. It's the same thing.
You can feel like you're doing things for others.
Yes, actually it's not.
It's just noise for yourself.
Yeah, noise for yourself and the need to be needed.
Yeah, that's potent. Definitely do not recognize myself in that. Can you talk about the benefit that the exploration and pursuit of silence has brought to you?
To me, yeah. I for myself, I started very young because in Australia we raised on a farm, and then we lived in this huge eucalyptus forest, which I loved to go and spend time. And my father said, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" I said, "Yes, fine."
Mooning about it.
And so the benefit for me was the connection with nature was much stronger, the connection with myself. And I remember one day I was discussing it with somebody, I forget who it was, but I remember on Christmas Day at sunrise just leaving the home before everybody woke up and going to the forest, selecting a tree, sitting next to it, but my back, touching it. And then in the distance there was this huge fir tree, and it was like a ball, like it didn't have a trunk, which is unusual. It didn't have a trunk. There was all these, dew was on it. Then the sun was rising, a little wind came. As the sun was rising, the sunlight caught the dewdrops. And so there were all these different colours, blue and green and all of this. And it's like, I felt nature giving me the gift of what a real Christmas tree is. Because at home we had all these coloured lights, plastic, I was just, I was just astounded. And then, of course, as the sun rose more, the dew dissolved. And the benefit for me in that experience was there is so much beauty that we never see. There's so much beauty that we never appreciate. And as it's in nature, it must also be a beauty in people that if we actually don't really stop and tune in and appreciate, we just see the defects. We just see what's wrong. And I had a friend like this, she came to me, and I don't know what I was doing. I tend to be over-enthusiastic.
Really?
Yes.
I wouldn't have got that at all.
No. Anyway, she was telling me, I'll cut a long story short, I never get disappointed by anyone, and nothing shocks me. I thought, that's pretty good. I was wondering, she must be very spiritually high. How does she manage? Because, you get disappointed by certain things. And, I don't get seismic shocks anymore, but, a bit sometimes. Things happen. Unexpected. And I said, really, you never get disappointed by anybody? You never get, dissatisfied or shocked by a situation? She said, no. I said, how do you do it? And she told me, said, I always expect the worst.
Yeah. That's doing it wrong, right?
It is. I always expect the worst. And I said, you're not serious, are you? She said, yes, I've got to be a realist.
Yeah.
I said, but this is not realist. This is pessimism to the nth degree. You expect the worst. You know, if you expect the worst, you're going to get the worst. I said, and she said, I don't get hurt. I said, I'm sure you do still. I'm sure you can't connect. I mean, she's a good friend, you know, so I could talk to her openly. And I said, you know, there's no way to live. I mean, always on guard, always suspicious. I mean, I prefer to trust. Okay, now I'm a bit more careful, but, you know, prefer to trust, and whatever may happen. But if I'm strong inside, even if somebody misuses that trust, I'm not damaged. I maybe, you know, shake a bit, but I'm not damaged.
It doesn't kill you.
It
doesn't undo you.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I think we often, I watch parents with kids saying, oh, you might fall down. Will his head come off?
Yeah.
If not, he's probably going to be okay. But we seem to be at this point where we don't want to get hurt because it might be the end of the world. Yeah. How do we deal with that?
Fear. But this is the whole thing of insecurity. Most of the fear is the very deep insecurity. And so countries build up arms. Other people, you know, people may build up defenses, psychological, emotional, in whatever way they do it, thinking they'll be more secure. But, you know, whatever method you use is going to be, the fruit is according to the seed. So if people think that, for example, they have to use violence in order to secure themselves, that may be verbal, it may be physical, you're just going to get violence. Because the seed is like that. And security, how do you create that security where those fears go out? And really, the real security comes from honest actions, transparent intentions.
Some people would say that is naive.
Yeah, but look at them.
That is the most amazing thing you've said. All right. I want to talk to you about unnecessary information. You write of books, thinking, analysis, and information as unnecessary knowledge. Are you sure? Is it an excess of those things that cause us to seem to know less? Yes. Or is it what we choose to do with what we read, think, analyze, and learn?
What we choose to do, but also excess, where there's not a decision taken to do something with it. That's where it's useless.
Unpack that a little bit. To do what with it?
You know, for example, I am told, you know, for example, this thing of mindfulness and heartfulness, you know, compassion, caring. But I have, no matter how much I read about all of that, which is useful in itself, when am I going to start to really apply it? Rather than get lost in the seeker syndrome.
The accumulation of information.
Yeah.
So again, going back to that, making the connection between your values and your behavior.
Yes. Yeah. Because, you know, the seeker just, you know, oh, I've done this workshop, I've done that one, I've read this book. Fine, but, you know, there's deep transformations taking place that is viable. So, because, you know, thinking is useful to a point, discussing is useful to a point, but I don't learn just by thinking and discussing. I learn by doing something. You know, I may study, but I may not learn. You know, I may study all the different books and all the different things, which is useful, but it's only useful to the point that I put something into an action and then I learn from that action. Because you just cannot learn until you get into action. And so if I'm just accumulating, and not putting into action, then what happened is a big overload in the intellect, and you can see many extremely clever people who are emotionally dysfunctional.
Let's talk about God.
Yes, if you like.
Well, you write a lot about communing with God in silence, and I'm curious about the role that God plays in your thinking on this. And I guess which God we're talking about.
Is there?
Well, this is a great question, but I'll ask the questions.
Okay. Yes. When I think of God, and also what I've learned from Raj Yoga is, I think of a very democratic source in the universe, and this source is available to any person, irrespective of time, culture, and especially irrespective of label, because people take a label thinking they'll have a privilege, they'll have an access. And this is what we're taught. In Italian I was taught this. You're Catholic, you get to heaven, and all of that. And part of me never really believed it. But the way that I can think about God is I think of sunlight. It goes to any country, anywhere. But
Except here.
We're just being tested,
But there's trees. Some sunlight must be reached.
once in a great while.
But so there has to be a response. The light comes, but then there has to be that response. Or a lighthouse. I mean, God is actually really like a lighthouse also, because the lighthouse is there and it gives light, and any ship can come and take it. The lighthouse will not say, well, this is a Chinese ship, I don't like them too much, I won't give so much light. Or this is an English ship, I like them a lot, I'll give them. The lighthouse will just give the same light to any ship that comes. Now, what the captain of the ship does with it is another thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you see, what has happened with the idea of God, God has become extremely abstract, and it's been exploited a lot, and it's become a dependency rather than a relationship. Because in any relationship, it's a partnership, and I'm responsible. I can get illumination, I can get whatever, but then what do I do with it? It's like the light comes onto the seed, but then the seed uses it because the light facilitates. But it's getting a lot of light to see, but nothing's happening. Well, it's a bit useless. And so, and I think people have done that also to each other. It's not just with God, also to each other. They wait for, the white prince, or they, wait for the savior, or they haven't realized, or they may not realized, they've forgotten a partnership. In learning, it's teacher and student. The student has the responsibility as well as the teacher. In healing, it's the health worker as well as the patient. It cannot be one-sided. And when we're very weak, we're very demanding. And we expect. And so sometimes the relationship with God, I know this from the practices I was involved in. And so, I light 100 candles, which means then maybe my son will pass this exam, or talk to, or get to a particular saint. When God seems a bit far, then choose a saint.
The intermediaries.
The intermediary.
Yeah, the ones who have his ear. Yeah.
So the whole thing is that I don't need a label to connect, but there's one thing I do need, and that is a very, a clean motive for connecting.
So there's an opportunity, a secular opportunity here as well. A so-called non-believer can also make this connection.
Of course. And you see, a lot of people don't believe because either sometimes the bad experiences they've had, but you can't make the actions of other people an excuse. Like when I was at school, in the Catholic school, and a lot of my friends were saying, oh no, God can't be like this, there can't be God, because this, and this, and the church did this. But, you know, I said, that's a separate thing. It's a separate thing. It's like, I would never judge what, with the church or Christianity, I will not judge Christ by that. You know, it's quite different.
Yeah.
And even in the church, there are some very good people. I mean, you know, it's so easy to demonize and completely label. You've got to see everything individually. You know, like, you know, people do that even with race and with nationality. It's much convenient. It's very convenient to, you know why it's convenient to labelize? You don't have to think anymore.
You don't have to engage.
You don't have to engage.
You have no responsibility.
You have no
You
responsibility.
can abdicate.
But this is the problem sometimes with the belief with God. People abdicate their responsibility, and this is not a part. This is not how that relationship will function.
Ultimately, what do you believe is at stake if we don't develop a deeper relationship with silence?
I think we'll become, you know, the victims of superficiality and noise, and there's no discernment in what I hear. I think that because one of the things that silence or being quiet does is develop discernment. Not judging, that's a different thing. You know, people can judge and criticize and label. Is there such a word as labelize? No, but
Probably not. The language is alive, so there's that.
Whereas discernment is a very different thing. Discernment tunes me into the appropriateness of something. Like today, discern in silence. I step back, that space of silence, discern what is appropriate with this person, with the situation. You know, in 3 days, like today maybe just keep quiet. In 3 days, it's not to keep quiet, to have the courage to clarify something. You know, you don't work to formulas.
Yeah.
Because you see, when you work to formulas, then often the realities are lost. Because, for example, equality. Everybody talks about it, and that's the problem. They talk about it, and there's not really that practice. And I remember when reading all the I had to read sort of independence, what do you
Like
call
a
it?
declaration.
Declaration of things, and everybody says equality, fraternity, all this. But then, you know, when they were first included, women were not included,
Yeah.
black people were not there. You know how it was. You have to go into it. But this is the whole thing. It's so easy to have formula thinking rather than more contemplative, or let's say reflective thinking. And that's where the science comes in. There's more contemplative thinking. It's a little different from reflective thinking, but it's much better than just formula thinking, because we are deceived that by the idea, because the idea is right in itself. It's right in itself, but I'm not, or even a society is not really practicing it. And so silence helps me to discern this. You know, where am I really going? And where, you know, the society may be going, but especially for myself, because individuals count, and individuals do have an impact. They always have had. Then they've got other people together, but more reflective or contemplative thinking creates a lot of newness and insight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Shall we entertain some questions from
Yes.
the room? Would anybody like to ask anybody a question? We have time for a few. Yeah.
At the very beginning, you spoke about I am peace and using basically affirmations, and you said that if it's not followed by the action, where do you expect people to start?
With understanding. Because I may say, I am peace, I am peace, I am peace, but I'm not understanding that if I have a feeling of animosity, that is really interfering in it. And so I'm self-hypnotizing. Because I'm a very, you know, this is the whole thing with affirmation. I find sometimes it's good to affirm a positive mentality and attitude, but if you start to be robotic about it, I am peace, I am peace. I can't stand this one though. You know, this one, you know, is a pain. you know.
Okay.
You know, it's...
But isn't it a process too? Like, doesn't that kind of take time? I thought when you realize, you know what, my actions haven't been good, I need peace. So you start using the affirmations to kind of bring that to you, because as we know, that's energetic too.
Yes,
So,
it is. It is. But you
So
but I have to be very careful that it doesn't become a routine. And how long does it take to change an attitude? How long does it take? How long does it take to change a thought? It can take a second, or it can take a lifetime. Up to me to decide.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have a question? Thank you.
It's a blessing for you to be here this evening. And you raised so many issues, I don't know where to start, but because of democracy, I have many questions, but I'll only ask one so that others may have an opportunity. You concluded with God, and you started with love. So God is love. Now there is the first impulse to emanate from a human being is not fear, anxiety, or selfishness, but love. Look at the painting of mother and child. In every culture globally, you'll see the bond of love. And for me, I think love is the highest truth. And there's something else I like to say, that the mansion of life and happiness, true happiness, not the consumer model of happiness. The mansion of life and true happiness is built on the virtue of love. Not love as a passion, emotion, feeling, or infatuation, or yearning, or attachment.
Yes.
Love as a virtue. And all sublime virtues, human virtues in life, have their origin in love. So this is why I like this so much. You're not talking, as many are talking about, a charter for compassionate society. Why do we need a charter? It's like saying that we need a communist manifesto all over again, or a manifesto for love. We are not a stranger to love. It's the first impulse in us. So the question is, what caused us to be strangers to this element of love, which is the essence of our inner self?
Yes.
Why are we alienated so much from this love and go for rock star love, movie star love,
Hollywood
love?
What do you think? Hollywood.
I think we have become addicted to secondary ways of expression. And it is the most natural and deepest thing is love, because love creates the sense of belonging, the sense of togetherness, many things. But what has broken that is actually a fearfulness that creates selfishness. And I'm in a grabbing state, a taking state. And real love is not even giving. Real love is sharing. It's a spirit of generosity that is there. And so fears, wrong values that we get so much. And look at the advertising world, and you know, look like this, be like this, smoke this, smoke that, and you'll be loved. They don't use the word love, but you'll be like accepted by everybody, which in most people they translate as being loved and all that. It's all false. But you know, but these things start to be believed. And another thing too is, although it's the highest essence and the highest instinct, it's like any language. I find now that you have to start a little bit more basic. It's like I was a teacher of English and Italian, and like English, I couldn't start with the future perfect tense straight away. Well, that's very fascinating, but you can't start with that. You've got to start small. I, you, he, she. Pink, white. And same with love. Because it's been often polluted and misunderstood, I've got to start a little bit further down, respectfulness. To deeply respect difference, for example. Because that's what life is. Life is difference. And that's the beauty. That's how a society runs. That's how this body runs. You know, I'm not all ears. You know, I've got, you know, there's difference in it, and that has to be.
Yeah.
So I can have a face and it can function. A society, not everybody's going to be a baker. Not everybody can be a doctor. But, you know, a wrong consciousness has given a sense of prestige to these things. That if you are this, then you are that. You have this, then you are that. And so the respectfulness has gone. And love is, you know, it's prehistoric. It's fossilized. And so that respectfulness, the appreciation of the existence also of myself and of the other. And with that appreciation comes acceptance. Also kindness. Just kindness. Forgiveness. That is, let go of things.
And through this, we work our way up to love.
That's how we work our way. Patience with with a person who somehow has a talent to press every button. Okay, let's try for one day. Let me try and understand why they happen to do this.
Let's start small. Let's try for 10 minutes.
Yes.
Sometimes that's all you can do.
That's true also. You can start. But this is the whole point. Start.
Yeah.
If you should start for 10 seconds. The point is just to start. And then it's like a language. You may keep those 10 seconds until you feel comfortable to go to 20 and go to 30. The point is, though, never to stop and give excuse. You know, I'm too tired, it's too cold, it's too hot, this person is always a pain. They never change. You know, I must get away from the excuses.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, but that's love.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, in practice, it's not going to be that easy.
Yeah.
You know, it's opening your heart. And another thing is generosity. You know, the spirit of generosity. You don't count. You don't measure.
I did it last time, you do it this time.
Yeah. Yes.
Look,
If nature did this, we'd all be starving to death. You know, one seed, like plant one apple seed, one apple.
Yeah.
One
be a
seed, one
disaster
apple.
for us.
No?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's one seed, and there's the apple tree, and then it produces thousands of apples.
And they come back again the next year.
Yeah, they come back, and each apple has seeds in it, which has potential for other trees. This is love.
Yes.
Because in it there's a spirit of generosity. But the tree is complete. It's just doing what's natural. It's not thinking, you know, I'm going to give 500 apples this year, and next year, because they didn't appreciate me, I won't give this. This is why the whole point. You know, people say, well, you know, I've been patient 25 and a half times. But who's counting? Yeah. You see, love is, as it becomes more a pure quality, a natural quality, you'll do it anyway, because it's the right thing to do. Not because it's tied to a particular result. Okay, you would like that it would work
Be nice
out.
if you got
It would be nice,
yeah.
but maybe it takes a lot longer time.
Yeah.
That's why patience is a very important aspect of love. You know, so if we see how it is built up like this, then we just don't get into this pseudo artificial understanding, which is the Hollywood love, and the word that we hear so much in you know, in advertising and things like that. Well-being, you know, all advertisements of well-being, you fulfill and you are great if. It's all conditional. Real love is not conditional in that way. And this can only be spiritual then.
Great question.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
There's a question over here.
Hi, I'm Joanne. I've been a meditator for a long time, and I've never heard of your organization, so thank you very much. I'm really excited to learn. My question is, in the past year I've had the luxury of doing quite more intense yoga and meditation. And I had an experience last August whereby I felt it felt like a pipe in the center of my body, and then something broke through. And it was the most amazing sense of joy and lightness that lasted that evening. And there was this young man in front of me who just collapsed in my lap crying. I felt so much love and light. It was just, I can't put to words the experience, but it dissipated after that evening into the course of the next day. And my question is, I can't help but wonder, is it possible to live in that place all the time? Is it narcissistic to want to keep meditating just so I can...
What a terrific question.
Well, I feel after, when we're new in something, that we're doing it, and we are given those experiences to make us realize that there is another level of being, there is another level of consciousness. And it's all, just like saying, wake up to this reality. But what one finds is that as one continues in that silence, that meditative experience, it becomes more subtle. It's not always to feel a high in that way. It actually, you'll start to feel that love and that peace, but it's more calm. It's deep, but it's much more subtle. It's like when you have a profession you're doing, there'll be those really high moments, but it won't always be like that, because on an everyday basis, it's sort of basic things you have to do. But there's a sort of a maturity has come in that there is an embracing, an acceptance, and I may not always, not every time I'm going to have a vision every day about a task that I started that I had a vision with. Mm-hmm. I started because there was this vision, that will go away, and then I get into the mature and everyday, learning, expressing, whatever. So, but you never know. Who knows?
Keep us posted. Try to write down how you got there.
You can't live off candy bars all the time?
No.
Apparently not, for some reason. I think we can take one more question before we do a little meditating. Does anybody have one last question they'd like to ask?
I have one.
Yeah.
I so enjoyed your talk and conversation. So that's been wonderful to be here. And what advice would you give? For me, there's been a lot of change, and it feels like everything in my life is in a big flux of change. And I feel like I have to take my courage to face so much. And what advice do you give?
I don't usually give. It's a suggestion. This is the whole point of actually this talk, is creating a space of silence, a space where I can be quiet and with myself and link in. Now, I don't know what the upheaval is or what the changes are, but usually it's linked to who do I feel I really am? Where do I feel that I am going, and where is it I want to go? A lot is often based on these things. And so it's very good during the day to take, could be 1 minute, could be 3 minutes, could be a few days, a few times during the day, just to be quiet and connect in silence with my own inner self. And I find what is very useful is just to ask myself the question, like, where do I feel I wish to go? And stop. And the answer may not come at that moment. It may come after a week. It may come through somebody you didn't expect it. A book falls on your head. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. But the point is that when I ask a very sincere question, the universe will respond. The main thing is that it's a sincere question. And so the universe will always respond. But to be in that quiet space is very, very helpful. Otherwise, I can get dragged into the whole chaotic thing. But remember, chaos is not always bad. It's just, like changes and shifts are happening, and I may not understand the benefit behind it. It's like a kaleidoscope. When you turn it, all the pieces are all over the place. What is it? But you just, you keep turning it, and then all of a sudden the things fit in. So trust also, quietness and trust.
That feels like good advice for everybody.
My neighbor had her hand up at the same time that she had her hand up. Can you entertain one more question from her? This lady here.
Yes.
Sure.
It's related to this last lady's question. It's the other side of sometimes it's easy just to get distracted and to go to those places of distraction instead of going inside to that place of silence.
Yes.
Television and media and Facebook,
Yes.
it's all distractions.
Yes.
I feel a sense of self-judgment on myself when I say I shouldn't be spending so much time on these things, and I want to be able to give myself permission for enjoying those things, but taking the time for the silence, and I haven't been able to find that balance to do that. I guess I feel like I'm weak-willed and easily distracted.
Maybe the question?
Is there a question? How do I make time for it? And how do I be careful with myself, gentle on myself for that?
But, if you're not doing what you feel you really should be doing, you'll never be gentle on yourself. You'll always be feeling, I shouldn't be doing that, I shouldn't be doing that, I should be doing that. And the point is, decide. Decide. Do I want it? Don't I want it? If I don't want it, fine.
Yeah.
If I do want it, let me do something. It's very, it's an addiction to feel guilty. It's an addiction to flagellate the self. Because you see, I just escape being responsible and making a decision. And so, it's up to me if I'm gentle with the self or not. Decide, okay, 5 minutes, 1 minute, 3 minutes, where I'm quiet and silent. And all these things, Facebook, there's nothing wrong with these things. They're fine, internet. Everything is how you use it. If I feel I'm not using it properly, then talk to the self. Use it properly. Nobody can come into your mind and shake you and say, do this. It's up to me to decide. And so let me take this great power that we have. I have the power to choose. I can choose today to spend a minute quietly.
Anthony Strano. Now I'll ask Anthony to lead us in meditation.
We're watching you, Stephanie.
I have no idea what to do. I'm a rank beginner. It's going to be great.
I'm starting from the beginning. So, what we do in this meditation, Raja Yoga meditation, is that actually we do use our thought. And because thought is the seed. Now, my thought then will create certain feelings and certain experiences. And my thought I can use I can have an angry thought, I can have a loveful thought, a peaceful thought, I can have a revengeful thought. So there's many ways that I can think. And then the result is always whatever that seed was. And they say the face is the mirror of the mind. I may say something verbally, but actually my thoughts what I truly am inside is what will be speaking. And this is when people say they pick up vibration. And so let me concentrate my thought. And sometimes it's very difficult to concentrate the thought because the mind goes all over the place. Well, it's natural because I've let it go all over the place. It's not going to just now, you say to it, let me be in peace, let me think peace. Why? No. Because it's had the habit of going here and there. So, I am a peaceful being. We say this, I am a peaceful being. Peace is my blueprint. Peace is harmony. Go to it very slowly, very deeply, and pause, and be there. It's not just the words that are being spoken. We say Om Shanti. You don't have, Again, it's the meaning. Om, I am. I'm in the present. Oh, I was, I will be. I am here now. I am. And the feeling of eternity, the feeling of the present. And for that moment, or these few moments that we do this science meditation, give yourself to it, believe it. Because if you start to say, so you remember, you always do create thoughts. We never have to give people negative thought courses. They know how they just know how to do it. But positive thought, we have to, like being retrained. And so in that moment, there's nothing to lose. I am peace, and I feel connection with my blueprint. But what can happen is always a little voice can come up and will say, peaceful, you? Oh, let's wait for Christmas. Let's wait till this or that, Doubt. Doubt comes in. And doubt paralyzes. So, understand, whilst in this state, let me practice it properly. Why not? And the thing is not to rush it. And if the mind goes off somewhere else, gently bring it back. Don't, it's very important not to be tough. This is the thing of gentle. You've got to be gentle with your mind. And don't think in knots. I mustn't get distracted, I mustn't do this, because it will then. It's like you want to give up smoking or drinking. So, no smoking, no smoking. So, no cigarettes will appear in your mind. Yes, because you're focusing on it. So, not to fight, but to gently bring back. And this is why we have a commentary. And that commentary is repetitive. It's repetitive because it makes me go deeper. When I was teaching children language, I had to repeat the word to them. And then they repeated it. And then again, until we got it right. But it was not just them parrot learning. They had to also somehow feel it. So meditation is also feeling. But we start with the thought. So don't worry if the mind goes all up in another space. Just gently bring it back. And remember, we energize or we discharge according to the thoughts we have. We can really discharge ourselves from happiness, peace, balance, equanimity, clarity. If I've plugged into the wrong socket. And that's the wrong socket, it's usually other people. And starting to react. So unplug, plug inward to the blueprint. And so this is what we'll do. So just relax.
Would you like music or just silence?
If it's silent enough here, we can just have silence. So just relax. Relax the body. I relax my legs, my arms. I relax my shoulders. And I relax my breath. And gently, very gently, I begin my journey into silence. The journey to meet my original self. Who am I? I am a spiritual being. Om Shanti, Shanti. Om. I am here in the present. Shanti, peace, serenity, quietness. Shanti is my original blueprint. My original strength. To be in peace, to be in harmony within myself and with all things. Om Shanti, Shanti. I am peace. Peace is balance, harmony, freedom. I relax deeply. I am free. And I go deeper into the silence, and I remember. I remember who I am. As my thought, so is my reality. I feel the thought of freedom and peace flow through all my being. Peace, harmony, silence. Let me remain in this awareness. Peace, harmony, silence, silence. And with one thought, one concentrated thought, I connect to the source of peace, to light, to the eternal one, the universal. And I remember this original partnership, friendship. I absorb light. I absorb peace. I recharge. And I remain. deeply into these feelings. Peace, freedom, light, silence. I remain here. Peace and silence. Peace and silence. Silence.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Anthony for your generosity of spirit and the sheer wisdom. Everything that comes out of that mouth somehow just feels like it's grounded in experience, doesn't it? So I really appreciate you sharing that with us and being here and giving your life to doing this, actually. Is it nice for both of you?
Yes.
Yes, very nice. Very nice. Everyone else? Thank you so much for being here.